The stars looked peaceful through the viewport of the Dawn Seeker. Captain Park watched them while his small crew ran their usual checks. They had been patrolling this sector for 3 weeks now, and nothing interesting had happened. Just empty space and distant planets that nobody cared about. "Captain, I'm picking up something," said Ensign from the communications station. His voice had that edge that meant trouble. "It's a distress signal. Civilian transport looks like." Moved to look at the screen. The signal was weak but clear enough. Someone needed help and they were the only ship in range. "Change course. Let's check it out." The Dawn Seeker turned toward the signal source. It took 20 minutes to reach the coordinates, but when they arrived, there was nothing there. No ship, no debris, just empty space. "That's strange," said, checking his instruments again. "The signal is still broadcasting, but there's nothing here." Felt ice in his stomach. He had been a captain long enough to know what this meant. "It's a trap. All hands battle stations. Try to." The space around them erupted with ships. Massive vessels appeared from nowhere, their hulls painted in deep purple and silver. Warships. At least a dozen of them, surrounding the tiny human scout ship like wolves around a rabbit. "Shields up," shouted, but it was already too late. Blue energy beams slammed into the Dawn Seeker from all sides. The ship shook violently, and lights flickered across the bridge. Alarms screamed warnings that everyone already knew. They were completely outmatched. "Shields at 30%, Lieutenant reported from Tactical. "Captain, we can't fight all of them." Knew that. He had fought in border skirmishes before, but never against this many ships at once. The Empire was powerful, and they treated humans like insects. If they wanted the Dawn Seeker captured, it would be captured. But's crew didn't have to die with the ship. "Prepare escape pods," he ordered. "Everyone evacuate, I'll cover your escape." "Sir, we can't just leave you," protested. "That's an order, Lieutenant." His voice was hard. "Get everyone out now." The crew hesitated, but they obeyed. One by one, they headed for the escape pods, stayed at the helm, firing the Dawn Seeker's small weapons at the ships. His shots barely scratched their shields, but it kept their attention on him while his crew escaped. The escape pods launched, scattering in different directions. The ships let them go. They were only interested in the Dawn Seeker. They were interested in him. Another blast hit the ship, and this time something exploded in the engine room. The Dawn Seeker was dying. Could feel it in the way the controls responded, sluggish and broken. He had bought his crew enough time. That would have to be enough. The ships closed in. A tractor beam locked onto the Dawn Seeker, pulling it toward the largest warship. Stood up from his chair and straightened his uniform. If he was going to meet his captors, he would do it with dignity. The docking process was rough. Soldiers in powered armor stormed onto his ship, their weapons pointed at him. They were tall, at least 7 feet, with scales that shimmered in the light. Their faces were almost human, but not quite, with eyes that were too large and noses that were almost flat. "I am Captain Park of the Human Federation," he said calmly. "I surrender." The soldiers didn't speak. They just grabbed him and dragged him off his ship. He was taken through corridors of the warship, everything oversized for their larger frames. Others stopped to stare at him as he passed. Some looked curious. Others looked disgusted. They brought him to a massive chamber that could only be a throne room. The ceiling stretched up so high that couldn't see the top. Columns lined the walls, covered in carvings that told stories he couldn't understand. And at the far end, sitting on a throne made of what looked like black crystal, was the queen. Had never seen a queen before. Most humans hadn't. She was enormous, even for her species, at least 7.5 feet tall. Her scales were deep purple, almost black, but they caught the light and showed hints of blue and green. She wore armor that looked both ceremonial and functional, with a crown that seemed to be made of the same material as her throne. Her eyes were violet, and they stared at him with an intensity that made him want to look away. The throne room was filled with others, all dressed in elaborate clothing. They must be nobles or advisors. They all watched like he was some kind of exotic animal. The soldiers forced to his knees in front of the throne. He didn't fight it. There was no point. "I am queen of the empire," the queen said. Her voice was deep and commanding, and she spoke perfect English without any accent. "You are Captain Park, commander of the human vessel Dawn Seeker. You were trespassing in territory." "We were responding to a distress signal," said, keeping his voice steady. "We didn't know it was a trap." "Ignorance is not an excuse," leaned forward on her throne, studying him. "You are a spy. The punishment for espionage is death." His heart pounded, but he kept his expression neutral. "Then kill me, but my crew was innocent. They followed my orders." Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe, or interest. She sat back and was quiet for a long moment. The entire throne room waited in silence. "I have consulted with my seers," finally said. "They have told me something very interesting about you, Captain Park. They say you are important to the future of my empire." "Didn't understand. What does that mean?" Stood up from her throne. She was even more imposing standing. She walked down the steps until she was standing right in front of him, looking down at his kneeling form. "I have a proposal for you, human," she said. The throne room was so quiet that could hear his own heartbeat. "You will marry me and become my consort, or you will be executed publicly in 30 days as an example to all who defy authority." The throne room exploded in shocked voices. The nobles were talking over each other, some shouting in the language. Could hear the disbelief in their voices even if he couldn't understand the words. He stared up at the queen, completely stunned. This had to be some kind of joke. Queens didn't marry their prisoners. They especially didn't marry humans. "What?" was all he could manage to say. "You heard me correctly," said, and there was something in her expression that couldn't read. "You have 30 days to decide. Wed me or face execution. Choose." She turned and walked back to her throne, leaving kneeling on the floor, his mind spinning. The guards grabbed him again and dragged him out of the throne room. Behind him, he could still hear the nobles arguing loudly. As they took him away to whatever cell awaited him, tried to process what had just happened. A queen had just demanded that he marry her. It made no sense. None of this made any sense. But one thing was clear. His life had just become far more complicated than any battle he had ever fought. The cell wasn't what expected. Instead of a dark dungeon, he found himself in a large room with comfortable furniture, a proper bed, and even a window that showed the stars outside. It was more like a luxury hotel room than a prison. But the locked door reminded him that he was still a prisoner, no matter how nice the cage looked. He sat on the bed and put his head in his hands. Married, to the queen. It was insane. Why would she even want that? Humans and had barely any contact with each other. Most of that contact involved border disputes and small conflicts. They definitely didn't marry each other. The door opened without warning. Stood up quickly, expecting guards. Instead, Queen walked in alone. She had removed her crown and some of her armor, but she was still imposing in her size and presence. "You didn't knock," said before he could stop himself. His eyes narrowed, but there might have been amusement there. "This is my ship. I don't need to knock." She walked over to the window and looked out at the stars. For a moment, she seemed almost normal, not like a terrifying alien queen, but just a person looking at the universe. "I suppose you have questions," she said. "I have about 1,000 questions," replied, "starting with why you want to marry a human you just met." "Not want, need," turned to face him. "Do you know anything about culture, Captain?" "Not much," admitted. "We don't exactly have cultural exchanges." "Then let me educate you." Sat down in one of the chairs, moving with a grace that seemed impossible for someone so large. Queens must produce an heir. Without an heir, the empire falls into civil war when the queen dies. Noble houses fight for the throne and millions die. "So find a husband," said. "Why me?" "Because our seers have seen the future." expression was hard to read. They speak of a prophecy, an ancient one. It tells of an outsider with soft flesh and iron will who will either save or destroy our empire. During the battle, my seers felt something from you. Your refusal to abandon your crew, your tactical decisions, your willingness to sacrifice yourself. They identified you as the one from the prophecy. Sat down on the bed, processing this information. That's why you set the trap. You were looking for me specifically. We were looking for someone. You happened to be the one who fit the prophecy. Leaned forward. I need an heir, Captain. Biology can be adapted through genetic manipulation to allow cross-species reproduction. You would father a child who would be half human, half the first of her kind. Her kind. Notice the specific word choice. The seers say the child will be female. Stood up and walked closer to him. You need to understand something. This isn't about love or romance. This is politics and survival. My empire needs stability. The prophecy says you are the key to that stability. And if I refuse, then you die and I find another solution. But the seers are rarely wrong, Captain. If they say you are important to our future, then you probably are. Looked up at her. You're asking me to give up everything. My life, my career, my people. To marry someone I don't know and live among aliens who probably hate me. Yes, said simply. I know what I'm asking, but consider what you would gain. Power, status, the chance to bridge two civilizations. And your life, of course, that's not nothing. It's also not a real choice. His expression softened slightly just for a moment. No, it isn't, but it's the only choice I can offer you. She left after that and was alone with his thoughts again. Over the next few days, he learned more about his situation. Guards brought him meals that had been specially prepared for human consumption. Someone had provided him with books about history and culture, all translated into English. He read them carefully. They valued strength above all else. Their society was built on a strict hierarchy, with the queen at the top and various noble houses below her. Commoners had almost no rights. Marriage was always political, always about alliances and heirs. Love was considered a weakness, a distraction from duty. It was a cold way to live, thought. Humans weren't like that. They valued connection, emotion, family. Not just blood family, but the families people chose. Like his crew, who he thought of as brothers and sisters even though they shared no genes. Meanwhile, news of his capture had reached Earth. His sister was there, working as a diplomatic officer. Wondered what she thought when she heard the news. She would probably want to come rescue him, but the Empire wouldn't allow it. They barely allowed human ships in their space, and definitely not military vessels. A week passed, then 2 weeks, was visited daily by. Sometimes she came to talk about politics and the prophecy. Other times she simply sat with him in silence, looking out the window at the stars. He started to see glimpses of the person behind the crown. She was intelligent, definitely, and lonely, though she would never admit it. Why are you really doing this? Asked one day. They were sitting across from each other, playing a strategy game that had taught him. The real reason, not the prophecy. Moved one of her pieces across the board. What makes you think there's another reason? Because prophecies are convenient excuses. You could have ignored it, found a mate and produced an heir the traditional way. Perceptive, studied the board. The truth is, Captain, I am tired of being alone at the top. Every who approaches me wants something. Power, status, favor. They bow and scrape and tell me what I want to hear. But you, she looked up at him. You speak to me like an equal, you question me. You aren't afraid to disagree. That's refreshing. I'm still your prisoner. Yes, and that complicates things, I know. She moved another piece, winning the game. But the prophecy gave me an opportunity, a chance to choose someone different, someone who might actually be interesting to spend time with. Before could respond, alarms started blaring throughout the ship. Stood up immediately, all business again. She tapped a device on her wrist. Report, she commanded in her own language. A voice responded, urgent and afraid. Couldn't understand the words, but he understood the tone. Something was very wrong. His face went pale, which was impressive for someone with purple scales. "Captain, stay here. Lock the door behind me." "What's happening?" "Betrayal," she said, and then she was gone, running out of the room. Went to the door and watched through the small window. Soldiers ran past, weapons drawn. He heard shouting, then the sound of energy weapons firing. There was a battle happening on the ship. Someone was trying to kill the queen. Made a decision. He might be a prisoner, but he was still a soldier. And if someone was attacking, he knew which side he was on. He found a weak point in the door's locking mechanism and managed to pry it open with a piece of furniture. The corridor outside was chaos. Dead soldiers lay on the floor, both loyalists and rebels by the look of their different uniform markings. Picked up a weapon from one of the fallen soldiers. It was heavy and designed for larger hands, but he could manage it. He heard fighting from the direction of the throne room and ran toward it. When he arrived, he saw surrounded by rebel soldiers. She was fighting magnificently, her combat skills far beyond what expected, but there were too many of them. Without thinking, raised the weapon and fired. His shot hit one of the rebels in the back and they fell. The others turned in surprise, giving the opening she needed. She moved like lightning, taking down 3 more rebels in seconds. Together they fought off the rest. When the last rebel fell, turned to, breathing hard. "You left your room," she said. "You're welcome," replied. For the first time since he met her, smiled. It was a real smile, not a political one. "Thank you, Captain." Loyal guards arrived and secured the area. Issued orders in rapid, organizing the response to the coup attempt. Stood nearby, still holding the weapon, his heart pounding from the fight. When things calmed down, turned back to him. "You saved my life. Why?" Thought about it. "Because it was the right thing to do, and because," he paused, "because I'm starting to understand you." Something changed in his expression. Understanding, maybe, or respect. "You have 2 weeks left to decide," she said quietly. "But know this, Captain, whatever you choose, I will remember what you did today." After the attack, things changed. Moved to quarters closer to her own chambers with personal guards assigned to protect him. The nobles who had sneered at him before now looked at him with something like respect. He had saved their queen's life. That meant something in culture. Commander Nara, cousin and head of the royal fleet, was leading the investigation into the coup attempt. She was almost as tall as, with darker scales and cold amber eyes. When she questioned about what he had seen, her tone was suspicious. "Why would a human prisoner risk his life for our queen?" she asked, circling him like a predator. "Because rebels were trying to kill her," said simply. "I don't need a complicated reason. Humans are weak, sentimental. You probably thought saving her would earn you favor." "Think what you want," replied. "I did what I did, that's all." Nara leaned close, her face inches from his. "I know what you're doing, human. You're trying to manipulate our queen with this marriage scheme, but I see through you, and when the time comes, I will expose you for the parasite you are." She left before could respond. He had made an enemy, that much was clear, but he hadn't been trying to make anyone an enemy or friend. He had just acted on instinct. Later that day, summoned him to her private study. It was a smaller room than the throne room, filled with books and star charts. She was standing by a holographic display showing troop movements across the empire. "Commander Nara doesn't like me much," said as he entered. "Nara doesn't like anyone much," replied without looking away from the display. "She wanted to be named my heir before I announced the marriage plan. Now she sees you as a threat to her ambitions." "Am I a threat, I mean?" Finally turned to look at him. "If you marry me and we have a child, yes. That child would be my heir, not Nara. She would lose everything she's been working toward." "That gives her a motive to want me dead." "Yes, it does." His expression was troubled. "I've asked Elder to meet with you. She's my chief seer, the one who first interpreted the prophecy about you. I think it's time you heard the full version." A side door opened, and an elderly woman entered. She was short for her species, only about 6 feet tall, with pale gray scales and milky white eyes. She was blind, realized, but she moved with confidence through the room. "Captain Park," said in a creaky voice, "the human who fights like a warrior, I'm pleased to finally meet you." "Elder," said respectfully, remembering what he had read about seers. They were highly honored in the culture. "The Queen said you wanted to speak with me." "Sit, both of you," settled into a chair with a groan. "These old bones aren't what they used to be. Now, Captain, let me tell you about the prophecy that has brought you here." She closed her blind eyes and began to speak in a rhythmic tone, almost like singing. "In the time of great darkness, when the stars themselves are consumed, an outsider shall come to the throne, soft of flesh but iron of will, weak in body but strong in spirit. This outsider shall teach the proud what they have forgotten, shall show the strong what they have lost. Through union with the crown, a bridge shall be built between worlds, and only through this bridge shall the empire survive the coming storm." The room was quiet when she finished, processed the words carefully. "The coming storm," he said. "What does that mean?" "We don't know," admitted. "Prophecies are never clear, but my seers have been feeling something wrong in the outer colonies. Ships disappearing. Strange reports from patrol vessels. Something is out there, and it frightens even our bravest warriors." "More than that," added, opening her eyes again. "The prophecy speaks of what you will teach us, Captain. The Empire is built on strength and hierarchy. We value individual power, but humans are different. You work together. You cooperate even with those you consider beneath you. I've watched you interact with our servants, the lower castes. You treat them with respect, ask for their help rather than demand it. This is foreign to us. And this, I believe, is what we must learn." Thought about his crew on the Dawn Seeker. They had worked together perfectly because they trusted each other. Each person had valued the others, regardless of rank. "You think your empire's strength is actually a weakness," he said slowly, understanding. "You're so focused on individual power that you can't work together effectively." "Precisely," said, nodding. "And whatever is coming, whatever this storm is, it will require unity to survive. That's why you're important, Captain. Not just as a husband for our queen, but as a teacher, a bridge between our ways and yours." Before could respond, alarms began blaring again. But these weren't internal alarms. These were the sounds of external attack warnings. Was on her feet immediately, her military training taking over. "What's happening?" asked, following her. "I don't know, but we're about to find out." They rushed to the command bridge, with Elder moving surprisingly quickly behind them. The bridge was organized chaos, with officers calling out reports and updating displays. The view screen showed space outside the ship, and what saw made his blood run cold. Ships were approaching, but they weren't ships or human ships. They were something else entirely. Dark vessels that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Their shapes were wrong, asymmetrical, and disturbing to look at. And there were hundreds of them. "What are those?" demanded. "Unknown contacts, Your Majesty," the tactical officer reported. "They appeared without warning. No warp signatures, no engine trails. They just appeared." "Hail them," ordered. "We've tried, Majesty. No response." The dark ships opened fire. Not with energy weapons, but with something that looked like living matter, black tendrils that shot through space and latched onto vessels. Where the tendrils touched, the ship's hulls began to corrode and decay. "Evasive maneuvers," commanded. "All ships' defensive formation, return fire." The fleet responded, their powerful weapons lighting up space. But when the energy beams hit the dark ships, they seemed to just absorb the damage. It was like shooting at shadows. "They're not taking damage," someone reported in disbelief. Watch the battle unfold and notice something. The dark ships moved in perfect coordination, like they were all part of one organism. Every movement was synchronized, every attack perfectly timed. "They're a hive mind," he said aloud. "Look at how they move. There's no individual variation, no commanders giving orders. They're all controlled by one intelligence." Looked at him, then back at the screen. She saw what he meant. If they're all connected, then overwhelming force won't work. We need to find the central intelligence and destroy it. "Yes," agreed. "Cut off the head and the body dies." "But we don't know where the head is," said in frustration. One of the dark tendrils hit a nearby ship. The vessel tried to break free, but the black matter spread across its hull like infection. Through the communications, could hear the screams of the crew inside. "Majesty," the communications officer said, his voice shaking. "That ship is broadcasting a message. Its captain, he says something is inside his ship, something that's taking over his crew." On the view screen, they could see the infected ship turning its weapons on its own allies. It opened fire, destroying 2 vessels before gave the order to destroy it. "This is the storm," Elder said quietly from behind them. "This is what the prophecy warned us about." More of the dark ships were appearing, surrounding the fleet. They were outnumbered and outmatched. These things, whatever they were, fought in a way they had never encountered. Suddenly, a familiar face appeared on the communications screen. Commander Nara, broadcasting from her flagship, but something was wrong with her. Her eyes had turned black, and when she smiled, it wasn't her smile. "Queen," Nara's voice said, but it sounded wrong, like multiple voices speaking at once. "Your empire has been chosen for assimilation. Resistance is pointless. We are the scourge. We are inevitable." The screen cut off, stood frozen, staring at where Nara's face had been. "She betrayed us," whispered. "She brought these things here." "Or they took her over," said. "Used her to get close to you. The assassination attempt must have been the first try. When that failed, they went for a full invasion." Turned to her tactical officer. "Sound the retreat. All ships fall back to defensive positions around the capital world. Send out emergency signals to Earth and the other human colonies. Tell them we need their help." "Your Majesty," the officer protested, "we've never asked humans for military aid." "We've never faced extinction before either," snapped. "Do it now." She looked at, and in her eyes he saw something he had never seen before. Fear. Not for herself, but for her empire, her people, everything she was responsible for protecting. "The prophecy was right," she said quietly. "We need you. We need your way of fighting, your way of thinking. Individual strength won't save us from this. We need to learn cooperation, and we need to learn it fast." "Then teach your people," said, "and let me help." For the first time since he had been captured, felt like he had a real purpose here. This wasn't about forced marriage or political alliances anymore. This was about survival. And if there was one thing humans were good at, it was surviving against impossible odds. "We have 9 days until your execution deadline," said. "Then we better make them count," replied. The capital world of was beautiful from orbit. Purple oceans, silver cities, and mountains that touched the clouds. Stood on the command bridge of his flagship, watching as the entire fleet took defensive positions around the planet. Behind them, hundreds of civilian transports fled to safer systems, carrying refugees who hoped to escape the scourge. 5 days had passed since the first attack. 5 days of constant fighting, constant retreat. The scourge ships kept coming, more and more of them appearing from nowhere. They had already consumed 3 colony worlds, leaving nothing behind but dead rocks covered in black corruption. Earth had responded to his call for help. Human ships were on their way, but they were still 2 days out. 2 days that they might not have. "Status report," commanded. She looked exhausted. She had barely slept since the invasion began, coordinating the defense of her empire. "Scourge forces are gathering at the edge of the system," the tactical officer reported. "We count at least 500 ships, maybe more." "And we have," asked. 300 combat-ready vessels. Another 100 damaged but still functional. The numbers weren't good. Studied the tactical display, looking for any advantage they could use. The problem was that the Scourge fought nothing like any enemy he had encountered. They didn't care about losses. They didn't retreat. They just kept coming, absorbing damage and corrupting everything they touched. "We need a new strategy," said. "Fighting them ship to ship isn't working." "What do you suggest?" asked. She had learned to trust his tactical insights over the past few days. Her nobles didn't like it, a human advising their queen, but desperation made people practical. Hit-and-run tactics, small, fast ships attacking weak points and retreating before they can respond. Don't engage in prolonged battles. Don't let them surround you. Keep moving. "That's not how fight," one of the noble commanders protested. "We face our enemies with strength and honor." "And how well is that working?" shot back. "Your honorable battles are getting your people killed. The Scourge doesn't care about honor. They care about winning. So we need to care about winning too." "The human is right," said before the argument could continue. "We adapt or we die. Reorganize the fleet into smaller squadrons. Fast ships only. Use the tactics Captain Park recommends." The nobles didn't like it, but they obeyed. Over the next several hours, the fleet reorganized itself. It went against everything in their military tradition, but they did it anyway. Worked with the squadron commanders, teaching them the basics of guerrilla warfare. Attack from unexpected angles. Use the planet's gravity well for cover. Coordinate strikes to overwhelm one target, then scatter before reinforcements arrive. These were tactics humans had developed fighting larger, more powerful enemies. Now they would use them against the Scourge. An alert chimed. A new ship had just entered the system, broadcasting human identification codes. But it wasn't the fleet from Earth. It was a single diplomatic vessel. "That's the ambassador ship," said, recognizing the signature. His heart jumped. "That's my sister's ship." Minutes later, Park walked onto the bridge. She was smaller than her brother, with short hair and sharp eyes that took in everything immediately. When she saw, relief flooded her face. "You're alive," she said, then punched him in the shoulder. "You idiot, you scared me half to death." "Good to see you too," said, rubbing his arm. Turned to and bowed formally. "Queen, I'm Ambassador Park, representing the Human Federation. Our fleet is 2 days behind me, but I came ahead to coordinate with your forces." Ambassador nodded. "Your timing is fortunate. We need all the help we can get." Looked at the tactical display and whistled. "That's a lot of hostile ships. What are we dealing with here?" "They call themselves the Scourge," explained. "Hive mind, extremely aggressive. They corrupt and assimilate everything they touch. They've already taken 3 colony worlds." "And one of your commanders," added, looking at a report on her data pad. "Commander Nara. Our intelligence intercepted some of her corrupted transmissions. She's been broadcasting Scourge conversion techniques to other systems, trying to spread the infection." His expression hardened. "Nara was my cousin, my family, and now she's being used as a puppet to destroy everything we've built." "I'm sorry," said, and she sounded genuine. "But we might be able to use her against them. If she's broadcasting, we can track the signal back to its source, find the Scourge central ship." Looked at his sister with new respect. "The hive mind. If we destroy it, the rest of the Scourge ships might become disorganized." "Might," emphasized. "We don't know enough about them." "Then we find out," said. "I brought something with me. A new scanning system Earth has been developing. It can detect unusual neural activity. If the Scourge really are using some kind of hive mind communication, we should be able to track it." Over the next hours, his team set up the scanning equipment on his flagship. While they worked, caught up with his sister privately. "So," said, not looking up from her equipment, "you're supposed to marry an alien queen or die. That's quite the situation you've gotten yourself into." "It's complicated," said. "I bet it is," glanced at him. "Do you want to marry her?" Was quiet for a moment. "I don't know. A month ago, I would have said absolutely not, but things have changed. She's not what I expected, and right now, with everything that's happening, it seems like such a small thing to worry about. It's not small, said seriously. It's your life, your future. Don't make a decision just because you're scared or because there's a crisis. Make it because it's what you actually want. When did you get so wise? I've always been wise, you just never listened. She smiled, then turned serious again. But really, brother, whatever you decide, I'll support you. Just make sure you're choosing for the right reasons. The scanning equipment came online. Immediately, it lit up with activity. Lines of neural communication crisscrossed the display, all converging on one location, a massive ship at the center of the Scourge fleet. There, said pointing, that's your hive ship. That's where they're coordinating everything from. Studied the display. It's heavily defended. We would need to punch through hundreds of Scourge vessels to reach it. Not if we're smart about it, said. An idea was forming in his mind. We don't attack head-on. We create a diversion. Draw most of their fleet away from the hive ship, then send a small strike team to infiltrate and destroy it from the inside. A suicide mission, one of the noble commanders said. Not if we're fast and careful, replied. Small ship, minimal crew, in and out before they know what's happening. I'll lead it, said immediately. Absolutely not, several of her advisors protested at once. Your Majesty, you cannot risk yourself on such a dangerous mission. If I don't, who will? Challenged them. My people are dying, my empire is falling. I won't ask someone to do something I'm not willing to do myself. I'll go with you, said. You'll need someone who knows how to think differently, how to adapt. Then I'm coming too, added. You'll need someone to operate the scanning equipment to navigate the hive ship's interior. Looked at the Park siblings, then nodded. Very well, we assemble a small team, our best warriors. We leave in 6 hours. The next 6 hours passed in a blur of preparation. Put on combat armor that had been modified for his smaller frame. Assembled a team of elite soldiers, explaining the mission and making it clear that volunteers only would be accepted. Every single soldier volunteered. She chose 5 of them. Together with and herself, that made 8, a small team for an impossible mission. The rest of the fleet will engage the Scourge forces, explained to her commanders. Use the hit-and-run tactics we've practiced. Your goal is to keep them busy and away from the hive ship. We'll do the rest. And if you don't come back, one commander asked quietly. Then Elder has instructions for succession. The Empire will continue. His voice was firm. But I plan to come back. They boarded a small, fast scout ship. It was designed for stealth and speed, not comfort. The 8 of them barely fit in the cramped interior. As they launched, watched fall away behind them. You know, said from the pilot's seat, I never imagined my first visit to space would be to attack a hive-mind parasite from the inside. I thought maybe diplomatic meetings, some formal dinners. Life rarely goes as planned, said from behind them. The fleet engaged the Scourge as planned. Energy weapons lit up space as hundreds of ships clashed. The scout ship used the chaos as cover, slipping past the battle lines toward the hive ship. It was enormous up close. The hive ship dwarfed even the largest dreadnought. Its surface was covered in the same black corruption that had infected Nara and the other ships. Organic-looking tubes and growths covered the hull, pulsing with sick light. I'm detecting an entry port, reported. It looks like a docking bay, but there are Scourge ships moving in and out constantly. Then we time our approach, said. Wait for a gap in their pattern, then slip in with them. They waited, watching the pattern of ships. Finally, an opportunity appeared. Gunned the engines and they shot forward, matching speed and trajectory with a group of Scourge fighters. The automated defenses didn't react. They thought the scout ship was one of their own. They landed in the docking bay and the real challenge began. The interior of the hive ship was a nightmare. Everything was organic, pulsing walls and floors that felt alive under their feet. The air was thick and wrong, making it hard to breathe even through their helmets. "Which way?" asked. Checked her scanner. "The neural hub should be deep in the ship, toward the center. We follow these corridors." They moved carefully through the ship, weapons ready. Twice they encountered Scourge drones, corrupted who attacked without hesitation. The team fought them off but could see the horror in its eyes. These were her people, turned into monsters. Finally, they reached a massive chamber at the heart of the ship. And there, suspended in organic webbing, was Commander Nara. Tubes connected to her body, feeding her the Scourge corruption. Her eyes were black, and when she saw them, she smiled. "You came," Nara's voice echoed through the chamber by the hive mind. "How predictable, how foolish." "Nara," said, her voice breaking, "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry this happened to you." "Sorry," Nara laughed, and it sounded like insects scuttling. "I'm finally free, free from your shadow, from always being second. The Scourge gave me power, purpose. Now I'll help them consume your empire." Could see that Nara was too far gone. The corruption had taken everything that made her who she was. "We need to destroy the neural hub," he said quietly. "It's the only way." Nodded, tears in her eyes. She raised her weapon, pointing it at her cousin. "Goodbye, Nara. I hope you find peace." She fired. The chamber exploded with activity as shot destroyed the neural hub. Nara's body went limp in the webbing, finally at peace. But the hive ship wasn't dead yet. It knew it had been wounded, and it was angry. Alarms screamed through the organic corridors. The walls started closing in, trying to trap them inside. Scourge drones poured into the chamber from every entrance, more than could count. "Move," he shouted, grabbing antimatter charges from his pack. "We need to plant these and get out now." The team scattered, each member running to a different part of the chamber to place their charges. The Scourge drones attacked relentlessly, but the soldiers fought with desperate strength. Provided cover fire while monitoring her scanner, calling out incoming threats. Placed his last charge on what looked like a main support structure. The organic material pulsed under his hands, warm and disgusting. He activated the timer and ran for the exit where was holding the door. "Everyone out," commanded. 30 seconds until detonation." They ran through the twisting corridors, the ship collapsing around them. The floor buckled and walls oozed black liquid. Behind them, they could hear the screeching of dying Scourge drones. "The ship," called out. "Where did we park the ship?" "Left turn ahead," one of the soldiers shouted. "I remember the marker." They burst into the docking bay just as the charges detonated. The explosion ripped through the hive ship's core, and the entire massive vessel shuddered. Emergency systems failed, and gravity fluctuated wildly. Was thrown against a wall. Pain shot through his side, and he felt something break. Was there immediately, pulling him to his feet with her superior strength. "I've got you," she said, supporting his weight. "Stay with me." They made it to their scout ship, piling inside as the docking bay began to tear apart. Slammed the controls, and the ship launched just as the bay explosively decompressed behind them. Through the viewport, they watched the hive ship die. Massive explosions rippled across its hull, each one creating cascading failures. The organic structure collapsed in on itself, and finally, in a brilliant flash, it was gone. "Status of the Scourge fleet?" asked, still holding steady. Checked her instruments. "They're confused. The hive mind connection is broken. Ships are drifting, attacking each other, completely disorganized." "Then now," said, opening communications to her fleet. "All ships attack now while they're vulnerable. Drive them back, destroy them all." The fleet, reinforced by the newly arrived human vessels, pressed their advantage. Without the hive mind coordinating them, the Scourge ships fell apart. Within hours, the battle was over. The invasion had been stopped. But the cost had been high. 2 of their strike team members hadn't made it out of the hive ship. Dozens of vessels were destroyed or damaged, and could feel his ribs grinding with every breath. "Medical Bay," ordered the moment they docked with the flagship. "My brother needs a doctor." "I'm fine," protested, then coughed and tasted blood. "Okay, maybe not fine." The medical technology was impressive. Within 2 days, his broken ribs were healed, and the internal bleeding had been stopped. He spent the recovery time in the same luxury quarters he had been held in when he first arrived. But this time, the door wasn't locked. Visited him every day. They talked about the battle, about the future, about everything and nothing. The crisis had changed their relationship. They weren't prisoner and captor anymore. They were partners who had fought side by side and survived. On the 3rd day, came to visit with an interesting piece of news. "I've been negotiating with the Council," she said. "Earth wants to establish formal diplomatic relations, open trade, cultural exchanges, maybe even joint military operations for mutual defense." "That's good," said. "After what happened, both our peoples know we're stronger together." "There's something else." Sat down, looking serious. "The Council said they would agree to everything, but they want something in return. They want the marriage to go forward. They see it as a symbol of the alliance between our peoples." Looked at her, "So it's still political." "Everything is political," replied. "But that doesn't mean it can't also be personal. I've seen how you and look at each other, how you work together. That's real, regardless of the politics around it." She was right, realized. Somewhere between the forced proposal and the desperate battle, something had changed. He had started to care about, not as a captor or a queen, but as a person. Someone complicated and strong and trying her best under impossible circumstances. "The deadline was 3 days ago," he said quietly. "Put it on hold during the crisis," explained. "Said it didn't seem right to execute someone who had just saved her empire. But the question still stands. What do you want to do?" Before could answer, herself entered the room. She looked tired but determined. When she saw, she nodded politely. "Ambassador, I need to speak with your brother privately if I may." Stood up, "Of course. I'll be on my ship if you need me, brother." She left, closing the door behind her. Sat down where had been. For a long moment she just looked at, her violet eyes searching his face. "I need to apologize," she finally said. "When I first brought you here, I gave you an impossible choice. Marry me or die. It was cruel and unfair, and I'm sorry." "You thought it was necessary," said, "for your empire." "Perhaps, but necessity doesn't make it right." Looked down at her hands. "I've been thinking a lot during these past days, about the prophecy, about what elders said. You taught us something important. You taught us that working together, treating people with respect regardless of their station, that these things have value. Real value, not just philosophical concepts." "Your people fought well," said. "They adapted fast." "Because you showed them how." Looked up at him again. "I want to withdraw my ultimatum. You're free to leave, to return to Earth if you wish. I won't force you to marry me. You've earned that choice." Felt something unexpected. Relief, yes, but also something else. Something that felt almost like disappointment. "And if I want to stay?" he asked. His eyes widened slightly. "Stay? Why would you want to stay?" "Because I think we make a good team," said honestly. "Because I've seen what we can accomplish together. Because I've started to understand you and I think you understand me. And because I think we could build something here. Something new. A real bridge between our peoples." "You would marry me by choice," sounded amazed, "even though you don't have to." "I would marry you by choice," confirmed. "Not because of prophecy or politics, because I want to, if you'll have me." Stood up abruptly and walked to the window. Watched her shoulders shake and realized with shock that she was crying. He had never seen her cry before. "I never thought," she said quietly, "that someone would choose me. Not the queen, not the prophecy, just me." Got up, ignoring the lingering soreness in his ribs, and walked over to her. He was so much smaller than her, barely reaching her shoulder. But when he touched her arm, she turned and looked down at him with such raw emotion that it took his breath away. I choose you, he said. Not the queen, the person who sits with me in silence looking at stars, the warrior who fights beside me, the woman who carries the weight of an empire but still finds time to care about one human prisoner. That's who I choose. She pulled him into an embrace, careful of his still healing injuries. They stood like that for a long time, just holding each other. The wedding was held 1 week later, exactly one lunar cycle after had first made her demand. But everything was different now. The ceremony was held in the great hall of the palace. Representatives from Earth attended, including who stood as witness. Elder performed the ceremony, speaking the ancient words in both and English. The hall was filled with both humans and some of the nobles still looked skeptical, but most seemed genuinely moved. They had seen what and their queen had accomplished together. They had seen how human tactics and strength could combine to defeat an enemy neither could have beaten alone. Wore formal ceremonial armor that had been specially made for him. Wore white and silver, her crown gleaming in the light. When they exchanged vows, spoke in that he had been learning. I stand before you not as a prisoner but as a partner, he said. I vow to stand beside you, to support you, to challenge you when necessary and comfort you when needed. I vow to help build a bridge between our peoples, to show that different doesn't mean enemy. And I vow to love you, not as a queen, but as the person I have come to know and respect. Vows were in English, which she had been practicing with. I stand before you not as a queen demanding obedience, but as a woman choosing love. I vow to respect your voice, to value your perspectives, to never take your presence for granted. I vow to learn from your people, to help my empire grow beyond our old ways. And I vow to love you, the human who taught me that strength comes in many forms. When they exchanged rings, human tradition, and when they touched foreheads, tradition, the entire hall erupted in cheers. Both species celebrated together, sharing food and stories and hope for a better future. That night, after the celebration had ended, and stood on a balcony overlooking the capital city, the lights have spread out below them like stars. 5 years from now, said quietly, what do you think we'll have built? I don't know, admitted, but I know we'll build it together. 5 years later, sat in the same quarters where he had first been imprisoned, holding his daughter in his arms. Jinnah was 3 years old, with her mother's violet eyes and her father's dark hair. She had small scales along her arms that shimmered when she moved, a beautiful blend of both her parents' genetics. Tell me the story again, Jinnah demanded in the way only 3-year-olds can. The one about you and Mama. Which part? Asked with a smile. The beginning, when Mama said marry me or die. Laughed. Well, once upon a time, there was a human captain who got captured by an alien queen, and the queen told him he had to marry her or be executed, and the captain thought this was a terrible idea. But then they fought the monsters, Jinnah added excitedly. That's right, they fought the monsters together, and somewhere along the way, the captain realized that the scary queen was actually kind of amazing, and the queen realized that the little human was braver than he looked. Entered the room, no longer wearing her crown but still moving with royal grace. Are you telling our daughter the story again? She asked for it, defended. Sat down next to them, and Jinnah immediately climbed onto her mother's lap. Well, don't leave out the best part. Tell her how her stubborn father changed everything. I didn't change everything, protested. You did, said seriously. You changed how we think, how we fight, how we treat each other. The human embassy employs 1,000 people now. Students study on Earth. Our military academies teach cooperation alongside combat, all because one human refused to just accept things as they were. Looked around the room. On the walls were pictures, him and on their wedding day, with her diplomatic staff. Human and children playing together at a cultural festival. His old crew from the Dawn Seeker who had been found and rescued, visiting for the first time. I guess I did okay, he said. You did more than okay. Leaned over and kissed him, while Jinnah made disgusted noises that all children make when their parents show affection. You proved that love can bridge any distance, that different species can build a future together, that sometimes the most important choice is the one you make with your heart. Later, after Jinnah had been put to bed, and stood together on their balcony, looking out at the city where humans and now lived and worked side by side. "Do you ever regret it?" asked, "giving up your old life?" "No," said honestly. "I miss Earth sometimes. I miss some things about my old life, but I wouldn't trade this for anything. This is where I belong, with you, with Jinnah, building something new." "The human alliance is the strongest power in this sector now," said. "Other species are asking to join. We're creating something bigger than either of our empires alone could have been." "All because you decided to kidnap a random human captain," teased. "Not random," corrected. "The prophecy chose you specifically." "You really believe that it was all meant to be?" Considered the question. "I believe that the prophecy gave us an opportunity, but we're the ones who chose to take it. We're the ones who decided to work together instead of against each other. We're the ones who chose love over fear. The prophecy might have brought us together, but we're the ones who made it work." Pulled her close, still amazed that he could do that now. That the terrifying alien queen who had threatened his life was now his wife, his partner, his love. "Wed me or face execution," he quoted with a laugh. That was quite the proposal. "I've gotten better at proposals since then," said dryly. "I proposed the trade agreement with Earth much more diplomatically." "Yes, you only threatened them with sanctions instead of death. Very diplomatic." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the stars. Somewhere out there, other species were watching the human alliance with interest. Some with hope, others with fear, but knew that as long as he and stood together, as long as humans and continued to learn from each other, the future was bright. In the end, the alien queen's shocking demand had changed everything. Not through force or fear, but through the choice to meet someone different and find common ground. Through the choice to respect, to listen, to love. And that thought was the real message, the real story. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't weapons or tactics. It was the ability to connect, to adapt, to find the best in others and bring it out. And when that strength combined with power and honor, the result was something neither species could have achieved alone. It was something worth building, something worth protecting, something worth celebrating. And it all started with one impossible choice that became the best decision of his life.